Hey there, chart lovers. I was going on a trip to the moon, but my schedule got pushed back sharply. You see, I had the honor to be contacted for the first time by a developer. It wasn't a scam email. It was, in fact, written in beautiful English and gave me actual working game keys. Forgive my skepticism. My parents once bought me a game disc for Christmas when I was 10 years old, the activation code for which did not work. So, my dad went to the store, got another one, only for that one to not work either. I got sad, and he decided that the best course of action was to pirate the game. That's not just a course of action that I agree with anymore, that's my way of living my life. Anyways, the developers don't know how much this means to me. I understand if your game may happen to get caught within my crosshairs. I am very sorry for that. It happens to the best of us. But to sig me out, I have mixed feelings. You don't know the kind of a person I am. Worse than an alcoholic, worse even than a gacha player, I sometimes play League of Legends and even have occasional fun. The current game in question is called The Lost Village. It is an early access and it's got a few but very well received reviews, and you can tell why. Taking a glancing look at its page, you can clearly see the young development team consistent and reactive upload and patch schedule that's enough to put Riot to shame, because unlike them, this team actually fixes their bugs and does so on an indie budget. After downloading the game, we can clearly see this gorgeous background that has people flying on swords, and you might have an idea of what I'm getting into. Okay, calm down. It's not my first rodeo. Hell, it's not even my second one. And how's that serving me? Pretty well, actually. I still get anxiety attacks whenever I scroll through my disciple list. I click every icon so I can see who I'm dealing with because I can't remember their names. Meanwhile, I am bombarded by their layered selection sounds as if I'm playing an old strategy game. I name every disciple I intend to train after an animal so that they are easy to distinguish. To start this incredible intricate adventure, you must first make it out alive from the character creation menu, the complexity layers of which will baffle all the casual players into submission and send them merrily away from the true path of enlightenment. Pick your character's looks and body. There is nothing wrong that you can do here, except that you can. When you get to this screen, it may seem like a trap, but you can that easily get your hands on dragon body parts. I believed it might come with a huge drawback. Great power comes at a great price or whatever, but they don't. Here's a word of advice from a now cultivated Chinaman. Your master is the single one most broken thing from your army and within all your available units. He handles all outgoing raids and is the centerpiece character in all of your strategies, as you are quite literally unable to replace him. Choosing a weak body for him is like deciding that you'd rather be in the van when the alcoholic driver hits the obstacle at max speed. Only problem is, in this scenario, you'd be the driver. I'd be able to confirm I was the obstacle. So choose a strong body. The strongest body, the strength of which will determine the raw stats that you get, your starting and future innate abilities, as well as the traits that will define your master. Unfortunately, I can't seem to start my playthrough to becoming a god as a crippled old man. It's always extra demoralizing for your enemies if you one-shot them while still being geriatric. That dream has crumbled, but we've got other fantasies in store here. For example, in this universe, it is an optimal strategy to have up to 5 wives. Spending time together with them allows for a different kind of cultivation. One that allows you to stack bonuses on top of your other bonuses. We truly get to live our best lives.
Yeah, boy.
Next, you get to pick from 2 lists that are related to more starting stats and bonuses. In general, anything that increases your flat HP is trash. Anything that gives you a starting resource is also trash, and if I were to hazard a guess, your starting Divine Beast, location, and additional helpers are not all that important. Here's what I would have prioritized. Base stats, such as strength and wisdom, are somewhat hard to come by, and the XP boost is fantastic. Prioritize getting crit rate and crit damage after that because they work as multipliers to your existing offensive capability. And make sure to not overload your trait slots because there might be an upper limit. Split between the 6 traits from your Ascension and another 5 from your Wives, you might have to face dropping very good bonuses from your arsenal if not careful. Had I managed to follow my own advice, I'd be in a different position, but alas, my priorities lied elsewhere. Once you're actually in the game, you're to realize that you've been spared the glory of evolving to a cultivator from your small rice farmer beginnings, as your yard is quite literally already filled with wannabe trainees which are all ready to slave away, work towards their goal of ascension. You're of course to provide them with the necessary jobs, as well as lodging, and with the adequate training regimen, giving everyone an equal chance at evolution. Too bad for them that I'm the one to make the rules. You have to manage your city and rebuild it to its former glory. As opposed to one of its peers, the city building aspect is incredibly painless in this game. I do advise that you leave quite a bit of free space available around your farms in order to maximize their future efficiency. You've no way of knowing that in order to dig a hole in the ground, you need to research tech. You've less of a way to know that plugging that same hole and then digging it again somewhere else requires an incredible amount of skill and arcane tech that only becomes available once you've unlocked everything from the Tier 1 town center. The upside of the base building is that because it's not challenging, it's an incredible calming experience. I spend more time and in-game resources than I'd like to admit decorating my city and then enjoying it by walking around at the street level. The detail here, coupled with a surprisingly great performance, had me genuinely impressed. It's a great feeling to get lost in this game while building out your base and listening to the soundtrack, which, depending on how daring I feel, you might not hear at all because it's apparently causing copyright issues. Aside from that small hiccup, the artistry here is solid all around. What resources you can farm over from your giant floating island, you're going to have to take. Fortunately, dungeons keep appearing all over the map. Send someone to discover them and you can start raiding. If you want to keep a dungeon from disappearing, you subscribe to it. These dungeons come in various flavors, to suit your different gaming taste palettes. Of course, you have no choice in the matter, you're going to loot all of them anyway. The different types have different drops, and once you clear them, you can raid them automatically. In the order of my discovery, they come in as follows. Illusion Realms, also colloquially known as Vampire Survivor Dungeons. There isn't any real dungeon type layout here. Instead, they have mentions of formations. Remember formations? Well, thankfully, you don't really need to go through all that. In this game, formations provide passive stats to your 3 members. I've unlocked the 4-point formation, but I still have 3 members attending. It seems that you may not bring more than 3. Instead, formations decide which rotation of main attacks are rolled on your characters inside that dungeon. This is also on top of their innate skills that they can use from their skill books. Are you confused yet? Very good. Each character may have up to 3 groups of skills at once. These provide passive bonuses as well as allow for other active or passive skills related to them to take effect. For example, this one is the Sword Mastery skill group. It allows for 3 active sword skills to be used on the field by your character. In this case, I am using 2 of them, and 4 from the other 2 skill groups. You can mix and match the 6 that you have however you see fit. Unfortunately, my character is currently living the tragic image of the Black Swordsman. I should be ashamed for what I've done, but look at that damage. You and me both know that we play these kinds of games just to add as many zeros as possible to our damage numbers. If you get hit by an attack in this dungeon, there's no problem. With the 3-pronged formation, the other 2 dummies will do their job taking the damage, while you're out there doing all the work alone. Unfortunately, they can't attack when they have 0 HP, but why would you care? You didn't upgrade their skills anyway. Next, we have more classical type dungeons. In these, the characters auto-battle to resolve rooms. Here, they do not get extra abilities, since formations don't exist. You walk in with what you've got. Instead, we are tasked with managing temporary gear for our characters that will drop occasionally from the monsters. Instead of having a prepared layout, we are presented with a scatter of interest points which we have to connect. We are then able to select before entering the dungeon the room tiles that we may use to bridge the gaps. This is unironically an elevated dungeoneering experience. Feel like you're too soft and squishy? Grab enemies with less attack. Think that you can one-shot everything. Make sure there are no reflect monsters in the area. Having to heal? Just place down a hot spring at your nearest convenience. After a certain amount of rooms has passed, the boss room is given to us and we are forced to use it so we can enter the dungeon. Now to defeat the boss, all we need to do is spam all of our relic effects at once. What are relics? Our master is allowed to carry a certain amount of them, the effects and stats of which vary highly, but one thing stays the same. More relics allow you to evolve your relic card deck and make it able to hold more spells at your convenience. These you can drag in and drop them as you wish on the battlefield. It doesn't really matter to me what the boss does. If it gets impaled by 10 giant swords at once, it's probably going to feel it. Defeating the boss allows us to carry back the drops, essentially 0 stamina cost to our characters, meaning that if you can't take the fight, you can always do what would make the most sense, which is run away with what you managed to steal. And lastly, we have the Loop Hero dungeons. Ever heard of Loop Hero? In this game, the goal is the same, to get to the boss at the end of the dungeon. But instead of the dungeon being one giant maze, it is under the shape of, you guessed it, a loop. As you loop around the dungeon, you may alter the rooms in your path as you did before. This means that you must know what combat challenges you can face repeatedly to grow before the boss comes in. You have to strike a balance so that you don't bite off more than you can chew. It's at this point in the game that I realized the strength of the astrolabe. We loop over the dungeon quite a bit. 10 times 16 is 160 rooms. That's a lot of rooms. Place down a merchant which allows you to buy extra drops from the dungeon. Now fill the available space with casinos on the map. Gambling has never failed us, ever. Watch as your money exponentially skyrockets with every room you clear and buy out all the drops every time you pass them by. And if gambling doesn't go your way, well then you can just rob the merchant. You don't need to pay for something if you found it. Finding stuff is free of charge. After going through these many dungeons, you can use the acquired materials to get your warriors to the next cultivation levels, unlocking better gear, crazier skills, and longer, harder dungeons in the process. What makes this feel like a breath of fresh air is that it's straightforward, and with proper management and automation you can even streamline it. Transform your sect into an automated machine that produces top-tier warriors, elevating them to heights yet unseen, and use this as a springboard towards world domination. What differentiates us from other sects on the map? Well, that's quite an easy question to answer. Ching Chong, their religion, is wrong. As a result, their resources are being spent towards unholy goals. Resources that would be better suited belonging to us. I have no idea how to do diplomacy, but I understand the language of violence. And you know what? They were the first to attack me anyway, so I am free to do as I please. Speaking of fighting them, have you ever played one of those games as a kid where you just make units fight each other in a straight line? Where your only means of damage and resource production is to send more people into the meat grinder? Well, of course you have. I know what you did, Carl. Fighting another sect closely resembles that. You get to choose which people come in to help, and which will be the cannon fodder. Then everyone clashes head to head in hopes of destroying the enemy base. If a member of your sect dies, they get to come back sometime later, by having you spent a few points. Points which you can use to increase your maximum cap and regeneration of more points, or use them in shop to increase the stats of your disciples. Given enough skill, endurance, and upgrades, you will outlast your opponent and eventually win, even at an initial disadvantage. Let's see what else there is in store for us. Do you enjoy raiding huge bosses? What about huge spider lady bosses? Have you perhaps spent a lot of time raiding in the world of sexual allegations? Don't answer that question. I know what's the worst part during your raid: dying. You sit there powerless, watching as your team slowly loses their advantage. Your revive never comes in or is cancelled because 1. The healers are too concentrated on doing damage than actually doing their job, and 2. The one that did come in to rescue and revive you decided that it would be a good idea to do so while standing in the red circle, just like you did moments before your death. I can empathize and sympathize. It's hard to coordinate with so much happening on your screen. If this sounds similar to you and you wish that you could just control the raiders instead, well, that's exactly how raiding the boss feels like in this game. Except the control part, you're very much not under control. Let me elaborate. The UI over here has not yet been translated into English as of writing this. Yet, by the power of our Homo sapiens brains, we can infer that this is the exact same UI as the one used for our sect battles. This in turn means that the fight turns into a raid akin to killing Radagon in the fantastically popular game Loop, where everyone is running at the boss swinging their weapon and dying repeatedly to do as much damage as possible. The only limit to the slaughter? Your ability to understand and memorize Chinese symbols and icons. That and the infinitely scaling attack damage of the boss and the timer in the corner of the screen. But it's incredibly laid back. It is fun, and upon learning what each item in the shop does by looking at their icon, it's incredibly generous with its rewards. Of course, the boss is actually unkillable. It's in the name, after all. This is really just a DPS check, but it's also a spectacle to behold. If you feel that fighting the boss this way is a bit one-sided, you'd be absolutely correct. Here's another type of battle that would have you proceed similarly, except anyone is free to steal your kill and kill you if they join the fight. In the Bloody Lands battle, the UI and game flow are similarly filled with symbols that you don't understand. The biggest problem in this scenario? Not the boss, but the other sects that spawn on the other side of the map and come running at you, ready to get all of the credit. I only joined in once. I checked the world map chart to see if I'm ready for a measuring contest. I thought I was. Spoiler alert, I can't read. Anyways, I find the proposition of me winning these types of battles to be quite preposterous. My only chances of winning them are A. Outleveling my opponents and outgearing them so that I can one-shot everyone without any upgrades or intelligent thoughts, or B. Learn Chinese. I've been poking fun so far, of course. I've nothing but trust that everything will be solved, but the time there for release is out. Not only translations, but I also think they are taking constructive criticism to heart. That, and I am also very much impressed by their determination to translate everything by themselves instead of outsourcing to another company. Real critique. Please fix the spacebar usage consistency. Normally, if you would play a RimWorld or any other type of city management game, the spacebar is closely related to pausing the game so that you can plan out your city. The passage of time in here is important as the game is tracked in months and years, meaning that your characters will age rapidly in the course of them enjoying an afternoon snack. But that is not the point. They live 500 years. The point is that my spacebar better be bound to my timer. But it isn't. Instead, it's contextually related to any menu that you might be in, or any UI element that you interacted with. Click on the pause button and take a break. Come back and press space and the game will unpause. Open up another menu. While you're looking through the research tree or some other type of list, you realize that you left the game running in the background. You press space in order to make it stop while you're browsing the list. The game closes your list and instead keeps time flowing. If you want it to be related to time again, you have to manually press the button with your mouse. I won't deny its usefulness. You can click on a notification that manages 6 people, select the first one, assign him to his designated breakthrough, and then press space to see the other person. It's great, but please make that its own button. I've closed down the map in an attempt to turn on the timer more times than I'd ever like it to happen again. Next up, artifacts. Specifically, the character-bound artifacts. I have to ask, why is their customization automated? What purpose does that serve? In order for me to maximize my artifacts bonuses, I need to use high-quality materials that align with my character build as well as the required elements for the artifact to come into effect. Normally, I would just farm them out and request that my character use the materials I give to him. Instead, characters trade materials taken from storage with each other and craft their own artifacts. I have no idea why it is this way, but please consider that maybe my character should not use random materials whose elements are not at all required. I know there are filters, I understand that I could use those, but for the sake of my sanity, it's better for me to micromanage my top 10 fighters instead of maniacally checking to see whether my characters traded away their good materials for crap ones that they'll craft anyways. Between that and doubling my daily listening session of 102.3 Real Schizo FM, I'm considering choosing the latter option. Conclusion. The game is quite fun. It has the indie game charm where even if things aren't inherently tuned to perfection, their soul shines through to provide more fun than another soulless AAA release. My final score for this game is to remain unknown, as it shall be equal to the amount of guys I gender swapped in order to have more wives with good traits. If everything goes well, next time we'll be going to the moon.